The summer of my 18th year, by Ningbing led me to secretly taste cherries. I thought that after 6 years of a long, silent crush, it would finally bear fruit. The next day, however, I unexpectedly overheard her casually complain to a friend. How could I possibly like Zhang Shen? I want to chase the school heartthrob. I heard he dislikes girls who are too obedient. Can't let go. First, I'll practice my skills with Zhang Shen. I said nothing. The moment after X. Quietly, I changed my college application from Beijing to Guangzhou. By Ningbing's words were like a sudden thunderclap in the clear sky, striking me unprepared. My mind went completely blank. On this hot summer afternoon, I felt an inexplicable chill. The conversation in the classroom continued. It seemed like someone paused for a moment before speaking again. It must be Miss Wen. Just a little pinky promise. Then the class heartthrob is all yours. Isn't he like the pet kept by a princess in ancient times? Bai Ningbing laughed dismissively. What nonsense are you talking? He's not losing out, okay? Someone immediately echoed. Yeah, the class heartthrob is indeed a bit on the lean side, compared to the athletic school heartthrob. Du sais? Bai Ningbing, with a shy blush, threw a book at X. X's words were cut off. At that moment, I too acted on impulse. The atmosphere had already reached that point. Plus, I could see he was struggling with it. Who would have thought? I leaned in, said a few sweet things casually, and he obediently surrendered. After a moment of intentionally suppressed laughter, a few of them continued to tease. Who would have thought that the class heartthrob, looking so serious, was so easy to take down? Or is it that our Bingbing's charm is too great, making him willingly kneel and lick? Zhang Chen clung to you for so many years. He must feel like he's already lived without regret, having earned the queen's favor. The laughter in the room grew louder. I snapped back to reality. Panicking, I fled the scene. In my haste, I found refuge in a bathroom stall. Tears of disappointment and heartbreak streamed down my face, though I didn't know when. By Ningbing's words. Each one echoed in my mind, replaying over and over, almost destroying all my self-respect. If I hadn't heard it with my own ears, I wouldn't have believed it at all. The same person who had held me tightly just last night, swearing to be with me forever, was the same one. Turns out, you can do all sorts of intimate things without love. The so-called vows were just empty words. I naively thought we had reached a happy ending, but it was just another joke in someone else's mouth. I was so heartbroken, it felt like a dream. I couldn't tell if this reality or last night was the illusion. After what felt like a long time, my phone pinged with a message. It was by Ningbing. Just take your car and go home first. We're having a party tonight. I can't bring you along. I didn't reply. She added another message. You said you were going to surprise me with dinner. Let's do it another day. Anyway, we're together every day, no rush. I stared at those two messages and remained silent for a long time. From yesterday evening to dawn, Bai Ningbing was relentless, constantly pulling me into chaos. We spent the whole night in turmoil. After we were both exhausted, she fell asleep in my arms. I specifically reminded her several times. Tomorrow night at the rooftop rotating restaurant you've wanted to visit for so long, I have a surprise for you. Don't forget. I thought that after last night, I finally had the right to officially confess my feelings to her. Knowing how much she cared about the sense of ceremony, I used the money I had saved for so long to book an expensive restaurant. I prepared 999 white roses, the ones she loved, and arranged a romantic drone proposal. But now, in an instant, I had become much clearer. Without hesitation, I tossed the ring I had kept in my pocket, straightened everything out, walked out of the bathroom, and, with some composure, canceled the restaurant reservation, canceled the drone proposal, canceled all the roses. I told the florist, just handle it however. After finishing everything, I stumbled back home, sitting on the floor staring blankly. Since Bai Ningbing moved next door, I had been inseparable from her. For 10 whole years, I had never thought what life would be like without her, and I didn't dare imagine it. But from now on, it would only be me alone. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, the lights flickered on one by one, then gradually turned off. I don't know how much time passed. My friend Zhou Hao called me. "Zhang Chen, why didn't you come? With Bai Ningbing tonight? We're having a class party. That guy Lu Linren from the arts class came though, while you were away. He kept trying to get close to Bai Ningbing. The two of them are being really disgusting right now." After Zhou Hao finished speaking, he turned the camera to the dim corner of the private room. Bai Ningbing and the school heartthrob Lu Pioran were sitting closely together. Lu Linren held his wine glass casually in one hand and had his other arm around Bai Ningbing, who was only wearing a thin strap top. The two of them were clearly separated from the others. Even their conversation seemed to be intimate, like whispers in each other's ears. Through the screen, I could feel the intense warmth of the atmosphere. My chest tightened uncontrollably. Bai Ningbing had just said in the afternoon that she wanted to chase. Looks like she caught him by the evening. Bai Ningbing drew the adventure card, which required male on top, female on top push-ups. She had to pick a male guest to cooperate. As expected, her eyes were fixed on Lu Linren. He immediately stood up without hesitation. The crowd started to cheer. Bai Ningbing blushed and obediently lay on the sofa. Lu Pioran positioned himself above her and did over 100 push-ups in one go. His lips were curled into a wild smile, but his body remained fully controlled. It seemed like he was trying his best not to touch Bai Ningbing, till there was only one push-up left. I wasn't sure if he was finally exhausted, or if it was intentional. Lu Linren lost his strength, and his entire body collapsed on top of Bai Ningbing. The crowd screamed even louder. It was as if they were about to tear the roof off. Both Bai Ningbing and Lu Linren's faces turned even redder. Amidst the wild cheers from everyone, Bai Ningbing boldly wrapped her arm around Lu Linren's neck and tilted her head to kiss him. The two of them French kissed, completely ignoring the others. It lasted a full 3 minutes before they reluctantly parted. Those long 3 minutes, I stared at the screen without blinking, frozen, nearly forgetting to breathe. My heart felt like it was being ripped apart painfully. Fifth, Zhang Chen, did you see clearly? They were already kissing. She really loves him. Zhou Hao sighed, then turned the camera. He left the private room, found a quiet corner, and seriously tried to persuade me. "Zhang Chen, don't blame me for not letting you see with your own eyes. You wouldn't give up otherwise." My throat was dry. The sound I made was incredibly hoarse. "Yeah, I don't blame you. It's all my fault for being so foolish for so many years. I thought I was the one who was allowed to stay by Bai Ningbing's side. That place was always mine. I just couldn't stand her, Bai Ningbing. Why should she know you've liked him for so many years and still act innocent, toying with you, watching with her eyes wide open, letting you fall deeper and deeper? You saw it clearly just now. I really hope you think this through. Don't let her delay you for another 4 years once you're in college." "I won't." "Zhou Hao!" I cut him off. I calmly stated, "I won't give myself another chance." "Zhou Hao, I've already made up my mind. I'm going to change my university to one in Guangzhou, but you have to promise. Keep it a secret for now." After saying that, to stop myself from hesitating, I opened my computer in front of him. Without any hesitation, just before the deadline, I changed my double-choice university to one in Guangzhou, to all the top universities there. Zhou Hao was naturally ecstatic, practically flying off the ground. He had been trying to convince me to apply to the same university, but back when we first entered high school, I had made a promise with Bai Ningbing that we would work hard together and go to the Beijing she wanted to go to. where there was the broadcasting program she had liked since childhood, a top-tier one. So even though I didn't really like the cold northern climate, and had no particular attachment to that arts-focused school, for all 3 years of high school, I still considered that place my goal. After years of being neighbors, our parents were happy to see us applying to the same university. Everyone, including me, thought that by Ningbing and I would naturally become a couple when we grew up. But now, I couldn't find any reason to go to Beijing anymore. Or rather, after today, if I were to stay clinging to Bai Ningbing like I used to, I would despise myself. All I wanted now was to distance myself. Wherever I go, it didn't matter, as long as it was far from Bai Ningbing. She's in the north, so I'll go to the south. Before bed, I filled an entire bathtub with cold water, hoping to cool myself down completely. Last night's memories surged uncontrollably. The soft yet burning warmth of her skin when we held each other tightly. The heated breath near my ear when things got passionate. The lingering warmth seemed to still hang in the air. I shook my head forcefully, trying to shake off these absurd thoughts. I poured cold water over my head repeatedly, forcing myself to wake up. The entire night, Bai Ningbing didn't send any more messages, and thus ended the habit of us saying goodnight every day for 6 years. Maybe this is better. After all, this day was bound to come. I'll start cutting it off from tonight. I was half-conscious until almost dawn before finally falling asleep. The next morning, I was still asleep. Suddenly, I felt someone in my dream. A light kiss was pressed to my forehead. I immediately woke up, and the first thing I saw was a familiar chin and neck. The scent above me was Bai Ningbing's familiar lemon fragrance, and a faint, unfamiliar scent of ebony. I almost forgot. Bai Ningbing has always known the code to my front door. When she saw me wake up, Bai Ningbing casually moved down. Chuckling, she tried to kiss my lips. I hurriedly tilted my head to avoid it. I pushed her away with one hand and hid on the other side of the bed. Bai Ningbing paused, then laughed at me. "What's wrong? Are you shy now?" I didn't say anything. I just pulled the blanket over my head. Bai Ningbing scolded me while pulling off my blanket. "Zhang Shaoshen, getting bold, huh? You didn't even say goodnight last night. And you dare turn off your phone to sleep. Now you're hiding from me." She was quick. In an instant, she climbed into my blanket. Before I could react, she hugged my waist tightly. "Babe, I've told you so many times. You can't skip breakfast. I woke up half an hour early to bring this for you. You love those crab roll buns from that shop. I stood in line for a long time. Do you want to get up now and eat? Or do you want to eat later?" She pressed herself closely against me. Her breath was right next to mine. I woke up from the haze. I struggled hard to push her away. I just couldn't understand what she was thinking. She already had Lu Linren. Why still come after me? But she was so close. I didn't dare to touch her. I struggled for a long time, panting. I couldn't break free. Instead, she held me even tighter. "What's this now? Are you angry? Just because I didn't take you to the party last night?" I didn't say anything. She buried her head in my neck and laughed. "Let me guess. Your good buddy tipped you off, huh? It's just a game. Is it worth getting jealous over? Why are you still like before? Whenever I get a little closer to another guy, you always sulk." I was furious, but I couldn't find the words. I moved to the edge of the bed, my body almost hanging off. While she wasn't paying attention, I slipped away and quickly got off the bed. Bai Ningbing didn't notice. She fell onto the carpet beside the bed. "Zhang Shen!" Bai Ningbing gritted her teeth. Her face turned bright red. I hurriedly threw on a robe and rushed to the living room. I didn't want to stay in the same room with her, especially not in my bedroom. Before long, Bai Ningbing came out. She looked all scholarly yet helpless. After a while, it seemed like she had just remembered. She casually spoke up. By the way, last night you said you had a surprise for me. What is it exactly? Stop keeping me in suspense. We're old friends. No need to be all mysterious. Bai Ningbing walked over to the dining table. She picked up a cup of soy milk and handed it to me. Be good. Have a bite first, then you can get angry. Your stomach is already weak. I didn't say anything, nor did I take the cup. Bai Ningbing held the soy milk in midair for a long time. Eventually, she lost her patience. Why are you like this? Zhang Shen, there should be a reason and limit to your temper, right? I coldly replied. Do you even deserve it? Bai Ningbing got angry too. She slammed the soy milk cup onto the coffee table. She hit it so hard. The plastic cup cracked. The soy milk spilled all over the carpet. What do you mean by that? Who do you think you are? Zhang Shen, just because we slept together once. Do you think you can control me? Do you even realize how suffocating this is for me? Her voice was icy cold. In an instant, Bai Ningbing seemed caught off guard by how upset I looked. She apologized with frustration. I'm sorry. I drank too much at the party last night and I'm still not sober. I spoke too rashly just now. Bai Ningbing squatted next to me. She reached out, wanting to hug me, but I dodged again. She froze. Her hand hung in the air. She was about to continue comforting me, but my phone suddenly rang. She glanced at it quickly. Her expression changed drastically. She immediately stood up to leave. I have something urgent. You should calm down for now. We're in college now. You can't just keep losing your temper like this. Who's going to put up with you in the future? Less than half an hour after she left, Zhou Hao sent me a screenshot. It was from Lu Linren's Moments. Lu Yi! The gift doesn't have to be too expensive. A simple heart-shaped breakfast can make someone's heart melt. The picture was of the crab roe buns on my family's dining table. The packaging was exactly the same. I didn't reply. I just quietly squatted down and carefully cleaned up the soy milk that Bai Ningbing spilled. I tried for a long time, but sadly realized the stains on the wool carpet had seeped deep into the fibers. No matter how much I rubbed, in a fit of anger, I decided to throw the entire carpet away. Anyway, it was something Bai Ningbing had brought back from Nepal after traveling there with her parents. She had spent 3 whole days picking it out to give to me. On top of that, I gathered all of Bai Ningbing's things that she had left at my house. All the gifts she had given me, big and small. Even all the photos of us together. I carefully sorted everything out. After a whole day of work, I had everything packed up and thrown away. She probably wouldn't want these things anymore. After Bai Ningbing left that day, there was no news from her for the following days. I guess things were progressing well with the school heartthrob, or maybe she was waiting for me to back down. In the past, every time we had a Cold War, I was always the one who gave in first, without exception. But this time, I didn't look for her. There was no need to anymore. I blocked her on WeChat and her phone, changed the password to my house, deleted all my social media accounts. After doing all of this, I called my parents, who were on a business trip, to discuss. I told them that I wanted to go to the United States to visit my aunt during the summer break. My plan was, after the summer break ended, I would head straight south with Zhou Hao to report to the university. Aside from Zhou Hao, no one else knew that I had applied to a school in Guangzhou. This plan should perfectly avoid any opportunities to meet Bai Ningbing. Mom was still teasing me on the phone. You and Zibing are going on vacation together, huh? Make sure to respect her and take good care of the girl. I made up an excuse and denied it. I didn't want to explain too much. I only told her I wanted to visit my aunt and grandma. I had Dad buy me a flight as soon as possible. I planned to fly there overnight. When I left the house, I ran into Bai Ningbing's mom right at the villa gate by chance. She warmly greeted me and made small talk. Akin, what are you doing here all alone? Didn't Zibing say she was going to the airport early? Didn't she say she was going to accompany you to New Zealand for skiing? Have fun there. And he fully supports you. I was a bit confused. During the senior year exam preparation period, I had indeed mentioned to Bai Ningbing that I wanted to go skiing in New Zealand to experience the winter in the southern hemisphere. But with our situation now, it didn't seem appropriate to travel together. However, time was running out. I just responded vaguely to her and left quickly. But what I didn't expect was, at the airport, I actually ran into Bai Ningbing. She was with a group of friends. Lu Linren was also there. Bai Ningbing was holding a cup of milk tea in one hand and had her arm around Lu Linren with the other. They were walking at the back of the crowd. And every now and then, Lu Linren would turn his head to say something to her. Bai Ningbing would always patiently tilt her head to listen. Occasionally, she would sip from the milk tea in her hand. Unlike us, I often spoke. But Bai Ningbing never seemed to have the patience to listen. She would always start talking over me, just saying whatever she wanted to. It turned out that when she truly cared about someone, she could be patient. I took a deep breath, telling myself to have some dignity. What she does has nothing to do with me. If I keep thinking like this, I'll slap myself. But the path to the boarding gate seemed to be only one. I could only follow them from a distance. Finally, we reached a fork in the road. Bai Ningbing seemed to start losing focus. She made several calls, but none of them went through. She fiddled with her phone for a while, then borrowed a friend's phone. Her face darkened, and she headed toward the nearby restroom. Not long after, my phone suddenly rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Zhang Chen. This time, the tone was pretty sharp. If I don't look for you, you won't take the initiative to look for me, huh? You even blocked me. Go ahead, don't bother looking for me. When you get to Beijing for university, you're not good at making friends anyway. I want to see who you'll be hanging out with. Bai Ningbing's tone was unfriendly. She went on, scolding me for a long time. I didn't say anything. There was no way to respond to that. But Bai Ningbing seemed even angrier. I won't talk to you anymore. Hurry up and add me back on WeChat. I'm about to go abroad with some friends for a couple of days. Maybe I won't be reachable by phone. Don't worry, just find me. I couldn't even be bothered to reply to her. I hung up the phone immediately and turned my phone off. From a distance, I watched Bai Ningbing, who was still fuming, return to her spot. She angrily grabbed Lu Linren by the arm. Without hesitation, she walked straight toward the left boarding gate. I turned and walked toward the right. The day spent in the United States, wandering around with my relatives, were very happy. I deliberately kept myself busy, filling my days with various plans. I did my best to avoid the empty moments where I would overthink, and I definitely didn't add her back on WeChat, as she had asked. However, Zhou Hao and other friends would occasionally update me on Bai Ningbing's news. It seemed that Bai Ningbing and her friends had been in New Zealand for many days. For some reason, every day she would post seriously on her moments. This was a stark contrast to the Bai Ningbing from before, who would go months without posting a single thing. Sometimes it was a short video of her speeding down the ski slopes. Other times, it was photos of lavish meals and all-night party celebrations. There were often group photos at the snow park, with everyone making funny faces and having a good time, even though I didn't want to pay attention. But strangely, many friends would take the initiative to share with me. Everyone in one way or another was curious, wondering why I didn't go to New Zealand with Bai Ningbing. I didn't know how to explain. So I just made up something about family matters in the United States. Aside from Zhou Hao, who would directly curse Bai Ningbing as a scumbag, everyone else would look like they wanted to say something but stopped short when they saw me. I knew! They probably noticed something too. In every photo Bai Ningbing posted, she and Lu Linren were always close together, almost inseparable. But that spot, which once belonged to her side, had been mine for many years. Every time I saw those photos, my face stayed calm. But deep down, my heart would hurt a little. After all, she was my first crush. She was someone I had truly liked for a long, long time. In the middle of the night, when I woke up from a dream, I would still feel weak and sad for a while. Occasionally, there would be a sense of unwillingness, but every time I remembered those hurtful words, I would silently slap myself in the heart. Over and over, I would warn myself, Zhang Chen, don't be pathetic. You'll only make things worse. Once the withdrawal period is over, everything will get better. We lost contact for an entire month. This was the longest Cold War. Since I met Bai Ningbing, distance and time are great remedies. I endured a very painful period, till I almost stopped thinking about Bai Ningbing. But then she changed her phone number. Then I received an international call. Zhang Chen, you sure are something. Leaving me alone and running off to the United States. You've been gone for so long. If you don't come back soon, the summer vacation will be over. Did you forget? You promised to travel with me before. Perhaps it had been a long time since we'd spoken, and there was a hint of hesitation in her complaining tone. I still didn't want to talk to her. I was about to hang up, but then Antoine snatched the phone away. Akin, I hope you're having fun over there. This little ice girl, she never tells me anything. I only just found out that you two had a fight. Don't bother arguing with her. When you come back, I'll make her apologize to you in person. By the way, Bai Ningbing received her admission notice today. Yours should be coming soon too. When do you plan to come back for the graduation party? Auntie has prepared a surprise for you. And one had always been very good to me. Like a close relative. I couldn't bring myself to hang up on her, so I just listened to her ramble on. Auntie, I won't be having a graduation party. My parents are both really busy, flying all over the place. The relatives will just have a virtual reunion meal online. For now, I probably won't be coming back to the country. I'll go directly to school when the semester starts. Before I could finish, Bai Ningbing's voice returned on the line. Her breathing was heavy. I could feel her anger even across the Pacific Ocean. Zhang Chen, I've already lowered myself to apologize to you. How long are you going to be stubborn about this? If you don't come back soon, don't blame me for leaving for Beijing without waiting for you. She coldly finished her threat. After a long pause, when I didn't reply satisfactorily, she asked again, have you thought it through? Don't regret it. I hung up the phone directly. And then blocked this number too. I stared into space for a while. Eventually, I decided to go for a walk. To my surprise, my mom also called me. It turns out my admission notice had already arrived at home. When they saw the school name on the notice, my parents finally realized I had changed my application. They were very surprised. Again, why didn't you discuss this with us before changing your application? Does Bai Ningbing know about this? Her mom asked me this morning whether your admission notice had arrived. My dad, worried, leaned in front of the camera. Akin, are you really going to Guangzhou alone? Aren't you afraid of the heat? Don't regret it later when your intestines turn green, haha. I was speechless. So I just rambled a bunch of things to them. That the university I was admitted to was good. And also that I'd be going with Zhou Hao. So I'd have someone to look out for me. But they still couldn't stop worrying. You fought with Bai Ningbing? Well, you can't just impulsively change to such a faraway place. What if in a few days you regret it and want to find Bai Ningbing? There are so many guys in Beijing. You won't even have a place to cry when the time comes. Yeah. This separation would be for years distance. During previous summers, when I went to my grandmother's house for half a month, I would always be upset wanting to go back to find Bai Ningbing. The more I listened, the worse I felt. I might as well explain everything to them all at once. Bai Ningbing has a boyfriend now. It's not really appropriate for me to stay that close to her anymore. Mom, Dad, I have my own life. I don't want to just live in her shadow. So, please support my decision and keep it a secret for me for now. My parents exchanged looks. They were silent for a long time. After a while, they finally agreed to my request, but asked me to come back to China as soon as possible. There wasn't much time left before school started. They also wanted to spend more time with me. My mom told me that after Bai Ningbing received her admission notice, she went on another trip with her friends the next day. She didn't come back home for many days, and when on the other hand, would occasionally ask my mom when I was coming back to China. The day I returned to China, my parents came to the airport to pick me up in formal attire. When I woke up and got out of the car, I found myself at a 5-star hotel. I was still a bit disoriented. My mom pulled me inside, and as soon as we walked into the lobby, I immediately spotted her, Bai Ningbing, whom I hadn't seen in so long. My steps faltered. Bai Ningbing was wearing a fitted fishtail dress, gracefully standing by the fountain. She looked so beautiful, it seemed like she was glowing. She created a scene of her own, so mesmerizing that it was hard to look away. But after just one holiday, the youthful vibe had faded quite a bit. She looked almost exactly like the adult I had once imagined her to be, confident, standing on her own. I had mixed feelings inside. The unexpected meeting after avoiding it for so long left me frozen in place. My mom quietly explained, "Ah Chen, today is Bai Ningbing's graduation party hosted by her family. We thought we'd pick you up and go straight to the meal." My dad also added, "Weren't you the one who didn't want to have a graduation party? Bai Ningbing is such a thoughtful child. She specifically had her parents set the date on the day you came back. It's like we're all celebrating both of you together." Bai Ningbing seemed to sense something. As she casually turned her head, our gazes met. My heart skipped a beat, even though I had mentally prepared to face her when I returned to China. When the moment arrived, I still felt a bit lost. But Bai Ningbing reacted first. She was about to walk over to us, but was stopped by Lu Linren, who suddenly appeared beside her and grabbed her hand. Lu Linren freed one arm, allowing Bai Ningbing to loop her arm through his. They both smiled and came over to greet us. "Zhang Chen, you're back? Great! Finally, we can officially meet you. I've always seen you with Bingbing. Even though we're in different classes, I never had the chance to meet you, and it's such a regret. Thank you so much for taking care of Bingbing. Since he was so polite, I couldn't ignore him. I just forced a smile, nodded, and mumbled a response." Bai Ningbing's expression was a bit unnatural. She awkwardly spoke. "Why does he need to be introduced? A petty, hot-tempered guy. I thought he ran off to America and wouldn't come back." I didn't reply. I didn't know how to respond. Lu Linren was dressed in a bespoke suit, which was completely different from his usual sporty, casual look. It looked especially fitting for Bai Ningbing today. I looked down at myself. T-shirt, jeans, sneakers. My hair was a mess after the long flight. I looked as if I had just come from a post office errand. Mom suddenly remembered something and whispered into my ear, "The gown, I've already prepared it for you. Just change in the rest area later." I nodded and then shook my head. "No need. I'm not the main character anyway." Bai Ningbing kept staring at me, her eyes filled with complexity. Lu Linren also kept shifting his gaze between her and me. The atmosphere suddenly became eerily quiet. Thankfully, a few friends arrived at that moment, and Lu Linren immediately dragged Bai Ningbing over to greet them. He seemed to have taken the role of the host. I quickly took the chance to pull Mom toward the banquet hall. Bai Ningbing had only invited close family and friends, so there weren't too many people. When my friends saw me, everyone seemed to be really surprised. I just smiled and greeted them lightly, pretending I had no idea what was going on. But their eyes clearly showed their curiosity. Even when I went out to the terrace for some air, I could still hear a few of her friends whispering in the hallway. Weren't you and Zhang Chen in a fight because of the campus crush? Hasn't he already cut ties with you? He still couldn't let go and came to find you again. Bai Ningbing smiled wryly. He has that strange temper. After making a fuss for a couple of days, he'll be fine on his own. How many years has it been for us? How could he possibly truly break off with me? The other person sighed. Actually, Zhang Chen isn't bad either. After all, we've been together for so many years. The way he listens to you, we all envy that. On one side, there's the childhood friend of many years. On the other, there's the heart-throbbing idol. It's a shame to give up either of them. Then what about your future ex? What are you going to do? Bai Ningbing paused for a moment before speaking. To be honest, I also think Zhang Chen is great. But I just feel like I'm losing out. I'm still so young. I can't just have one love for the rest of my life, can I? A relationship where you can see the end from the beginning ... Just thinking about it is terrifying. To go out and see the world. But that doesn't mean it's over. As long as I look back, I know there will always be someone who'll keep a light on for me. The other person fell silent. After a long while, they laughed and cursed. What a heartless woman. I couldn't take it anymore. I quietly walked away. The evening breeze blew. My eyes strangely felt swollen. I only hated myself for being blind in the past. I picked the wrong person. This banquet today ... I feel like my mood is completely ruined. And Wen, however, seemed especially happy to see me. At the dinner table, she kept asking how I was, fussing over me. Chen, when you get to Beijing, the weather is dry. Boys need to take care of their skin too. Tomorrow, let Zibing accompany you to the mall. Maybe you should stock up on some men's skincare products. No need, and there are many malls in Beijing. And online shopping is really convenient too. She smiled and nodded. Then she turned to my mom for the dormitory, bedding, and such. When I was preparing things for Zibing, I made sure to prepare a set for Chen as well. I got everything for all seasons. Especially in the north, winters are very cold. I picked the thickest ones. I even bought several down jackets. You're busy with work, so you don't need to worry about preparing things for Chen anymore. My mom seemed a bit embarrassed. These things probably won't be useful in Guangzhou at all. But not wanting to offend her, my mom could only politely express her gratitude. Lu Linren, standing aside, had a very displeased look on his face. But Aunt Wen didn't seem to care. She continued giving instructions to me and Bai Ningbing. When you both get to Beijing, you're like family now. Chen, you must take care of Zibing for Auntie. Zibing, don't make Chen angry anymore, okay? Got it? Bai Ningbing, not really caring, shot me a glance. Humph, he's grown a lot of feathers now. He doesn't need me to take care of him. He can fly on his own. The atmosphere grew a bit tense. But Lu Linren suddenly changed the subject. Auntie, my school is also in Beijing. Don't worry. I'll take good care of Zibing. And as for Zhang Chen, he's far away in Guangzhou. And it's not really convenient, is it? Before he could finish speaking, Bai Ningbing and his parents both changed their expressions. Guangzhou? They asked in unison, looking at me. Lu Linren was taken aback. Zibing, you didn't know? The honor roll was hanging in the school, right? Oh, right. You must have gone on a trip and never returned to school. Everyone was staring at me. I silently nodded, bearing the pressure. Mom stepped in to explain. After a dash, Chen ... suddenly changed his major. He wanted to university in Guangzhou. That university is also really good, and it's the major he likes. Bai Ningbing didn't believe it. She immediately grabbed my hand and confirmed again. Zhang Chen, aren't you going to the same university as me? I saw with my own eyes the major you chose. Her nails scratched my hand, making it hurt a little. I couldn't help but get angry. Yes, I'm going to Guangzhou. What's it to you? Bai Ningbing couldn't believe it. Then she smiled. Are you joking with me? You, who can't stand the heat and hates cockroaches. You are going to Guangzhou for 4 years? I took out my phone album, found the high-definition acceptance letter photo, and showed it to her. Bai Ningbing took the phone. She zoomed in and looked at it repeatedly several times. Then unexpectedly, she laughed in anger. Amidst the gasps of the crowd, she grabbed me and pulled me out of the banquet hall. She dragged me into the break room and slammed the door behind us. Bai Ningbing cornered me against the wall. With no way to escape, she demanded, Zhang Chen, you're something. Just to get back at me, you actually forgot our promise and went off to Guangzhou to study. I stood my ground, facing her calmly. I have my own reasons. Why should I live according to your preferences? I've come to decide my own life. Bai Ningbing, ask yourself honestly, are you angry because of the promise? Or because I can no longer be your loyal backup? Are you angry because I won't keep revolving around you? Bai Ningbing's face turned pale. What do you mean by that? Can you not say such harsh things? We're both adults now. Wasn't it mutual that night? Are you still holding on to that night? What era is this? You sleep with someone. Does that mean you're locked into a marriage for life? A wave of bittersweet sadness surged up in my heart. But I still didn't avoid her gaze. Bai Ningbing, if you like someone else, you can just say it clearly. I wouldn't shamelessly cling to you. But you're really too despicable, clearly not liking me. Yet you watch as I, like a moth, keep recklessly flying toward you. Must feel good, right? And she still doesn't understand. People don't say goodbye until they've exhausted all their hopes. If I haven't given up, I won't say goodbye. I'd hit the nail on the head. Bai Ningbing's face turned from white to red. She almost lost her balance. What are you saying? Can you listen to yourself? She stammered, unable to continue. Zhang Chen, we've known each other since we were 8. Now we're 18. Since you've chosen to betray this relationship, then let's not even be friends anymore. After that, she left behind only this sentence and disappeared, running out of the hotel. From that day on, till the day I left for school to report, I never saw Bai Ningbing again. Zhou Hao sent me a post of her announcing her relationship on WeChat Moments. I didn't even bother opening it, just deleted every friend related to her. I blocked them all. There was really no need to pay attention to her anymore. It was only on the day I was heading to Guangzhou, at the airport, that I unfortunately ran into Bai Ningbing again. She was still with Lu Linren. As we passed by each other, she only waved a cold greeting to my parents and stormed off. She didn't look at me even once. We quickly went our separate ways. Neither of us looked back. Just before checking in, I suddenly turned my head. I happened to see Bai Ningbing also about to board her flight. She gave me a cold glance, then disappeared without a word at the gate. We had known each other since we were young. We had been together all the way until now. But from now on, we were completely saying goodbye. Later on, we didn't hear from each other for a long time. I even specifically told my parents not to mention anything about the one family in front of me. I arrived in a new environment and made a lot of new friends. I joined many clubs. I was busy every day. The unhappiness from before had long since faded away. I realized that living a life revolving around one person was actually pretty dull. Thinking about it, I surprisingly started to agree with Bai Ningbing's point of view back then. The world outside is so vast. Life is so long. It's full of endless possibilities. Why should I tie myself down to one person so early? I'm very glad. The school I chose is in a place without harsh winters, though the humid weather and typhoon days can be pretty annoying. and cockroaches are indeed abundant. I can see green leaves and fresh flowers all year round. It didn't take long to forget what winter even looked like. During New Year's, a high school classmate came to Guangzhou for a trip. Zhou Hao and I took him to have dim sum. He casually mentioned Bai Ningbing. He said that she had broken up with Lu Linren a while ago. There are so many universities in Beijing, and she's been hopping from one to the next. Seems like she's been in several relationships. She's always out there acting like a social butterfly. Totally different from the quiet, bookworm type we knew in class. She's changed completely. If you saw her now, you probably wouldn't even recognize her. I didn't say anything. Zhou Hao gave him a subtle look, signaling to change the topic. So our classmate didn't bring her up again. We spent New Year's Eve by the Pearl River. During 30, Zhou Hao and the others insisted that I make a wish. After making the wish, I realized this was the first time I've made a wish that had nothing to do with Bai Ningbing. In my short life before this, for 6 whole years, all my wishes had been related to Bai Ningbing. I'm really happy, because I've truly let go. During my college winter break, I missed my parents a lot. As soon as the exams were over, I rushed home. But what I didn't expect was, Bai Ningbing actually came with my parents to pick me up at the airport. After half a year, seeing Bai Ningbing again, both of us had changed quite a bit. She had gotten thinner, dyed her hair, her makeup was more refined, and she looked more seductive and mature than before. I froze for a moment. Then I smiled and walked over, greeted her gracefully. Bai Ningbing, little sister, you're here too. Bai Ningbing reached out as if to hold my hand, but stopped halfway. She stared at me in disbelief. Since childhood, both our families had often made me call her little sister. I had always been stubborn and had never called her that, but now with a different mindset. It came out naturally. Yet, Bai Ningbing seemed to find it hard to accept. After a long pause, she awkwardly withdrew her hand. My mom whispered in my ear, "We came out to pick you up, and just happened to run into Zibing at the door." She insisted on coming along to help. I smiled, motioning that it was fine. In the car, Bai Ningbing seemed to rack her brain, and shared some recent school gossip with my parents, which made them laugh nonstop. I, however, didn't pay much attention, only occasionally smiling and nodding along. But from the corner of my eye, I noticed she kept glancing over at me. That day, she seemed to want to come to my house, but the 3 of us politely turned her down. The whole winter break, I was focused on practicing driving. I was out early and came home late every day, and I always went out with a few high school friends in the evenings. I heard that Bai Ningbing came to find me several times, but we missed each other every time. I felt a bit regretful. I don't think there's anything between us that needs to be discussed. This year, both Grandma and Aunt went back to the homeland for the new year. On the night of New Year's Eve, the house was especially lively. After the New Year's Eve dinner, the older folks sat on the couch watching the Spring Festival Gala. The younger generation was all busy learning how to play mahjong. Bai Ningbing's family of 3 suddenly showed up at my house with bags of all sizes. Our house was so quiet. "You don't mind joining in for a game, do you?" And Wen smiled, teasing. In the past, both our families used to celebrate the New Year together. This year, because of the relationship between Bai Ningbing and me, my mom declined Aunt Wen's invitation to have New Year's Eve dinner together. But when guests come to your door, you can't just turn them away. Bai Ningbing naturally sat next to me, watching me play cards. My cousins didn't know about the situation between me and her, and kept teasing us. I smiled and clarified one by one, but Bai Ningbing's expression turned a little sour when midnight struck, and we went out to set off fireworks. She grabbed my hand, seeming like she wanted to say something, but just then, my phone suddenly rang. My face flushed slightly. I pulled my hand away from Bai Ningbing. and stepped aside to answer the phone. It was a local classmate from Guangzhou I met through a club. Her name was Liu Ruyan. She was also very good looking. Not the typical ice-cold beauty, but rather a sunny, cheerful girl who loves to laugh. She talked a lot and quickly, and always had a good sense of humor. I often found myself laughing so much I couldn't straighten my back. She said the phone call was for me. She was just bored to join us and ring in the new year together. I didn't think much of it. It was the new year after all, so I didn't hang up the phone. She ended up being part of our New Year's Eve celebration the whole time. Just before hanging up, she suddenly laughed slyly. Actually, I just wanted to be the one to say, after midnight, Happy New Year! Happy New Year! Zhang Chen! I laughed happily as well, and wished her the best. We chatted for a while longer, and when she finally agreed to hang up, I turned around, only to find Bai Ningbing standing behind me, her face like ice. I don't know how long she had been listening. Is she your girlfriend? She asked in a hoarse voice. Not quite yet. I thought for a moment, and answered honestly. Bai Ningbing was silent for a long time, and I thought she had no more to say. I was about to go back to the living room to continue the game, but she suddenly spoke again. Girls from out of town, you never know if they're trustworthy. It's better to find a local one, someone you know well. I nodded. Indeed, you can't judge someone completely by just their appearance. I'll think it over more. Thanks for the kind reminder, Bai Ningbing. You should settle down soon as well. Bai Ningbing seemed to have been pricked by something, and said nothing more. She just left the yard. I didn't think much of it. She's been prone to these mood swings for a while. Once through the lens of love, I thought she was perfect in every way, but after that, I accompanied grandma and my parents to visit relatives. Then we went on a road trip together. I hardly stayed at home. I didn't see Bai Ningbing again. The winter break was short, and before I knew it, I was back at school. But the next day, I actually saw Bai Ningbing at the university gate. She looked a bit haggard. And if you didn't know her, you might think something big had happened. Bai Ningbing, what are you doing here? I wanted to see what your university is like. And also, to see how you've been doing in Guangzhou. I smiled and answered, it's great. The food here is really good. If you have time, look up some food guides and try it yourself. She seemed a bit hesitant and didn't reply. Chen, can't you come with me to eat? Just this once. Before I could respond, a female voice cut in. Sorry, pretty girl, but I've already made plans with Zhang Chen. Please take a number and wait your turn next time. Liu Ruyan walked over from the side and stood beside me. As the two of them locked eyes, it seemed like sparks were flying. Zhang Chen, you came back to school so early just for her? Bai Ningbing's tone had a strange emotion that I couldn't quite place. I didn't know what she was thinking, but I didn't feel the need to explain anything to her. Sorry, Bai Ningbing, but we're going to eat now. We're leaving first. I nudged Liu Ruyan, who was standing still. Let's go. Didn't you say you wanted to try the authentic farm-style restaurant with the free-range chicken? It's far, right? Let's hurry up. I pulled Liu Ruyan along. And before we left, I glanced at Bai Ningbing one more time. As we crossed the traffic light, I looked back once more. Bai Ningbing stood at the school gate, watching us the whole time. In the shade of the trees, she looked particularly desolate. That day's encounter, I thought it was just a whim of Bai Ningbing, but I didn't expect that Bai Ningbing's emotions would come flooding back. It seemed like they came a bit too late, after she had indulged herself for over half a year and spent another quiet winter break. She suddenly started appearing around me frequently. I didn't know what excuse she gave the school to take time off, but she would often appear in Guangzhou for no reason. She started giving me various handmade gifts, or local snacks I loved from my hometown. I rejected them all. She would hang around my dorm building for no reason. And no matter how much I urged her to leave, she wouldn't go. As long as she was near me. She would follow me to class every day. She stubbornly accompanied me to the cafeteria for meals. Liu Ruyan, frustrated by her persistence, would sigh all day, occasionally throwing in a few sour remarks. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and when also found out through some channels, and sent me a lot of messages. She said the school had already started contacting the parents. Bai Ningbing had skipped to many classes, and at this rate, she might be held back or expelled. She begged me earnestly to really talk some sense into Bai Ningbing. I was getting really frustrated, unable to understand what Bai Ningbing was thinking. At first, she was determined to explore the world beyond, and now she was turning back, acting all emotional. I decided to confront her directly. Bai Ningbing knew what I was after. Her emotions suddenly spiraled out of control. Zhang Chen, why can someone with the surname Liu pursue you? But I can't? How long has she even known you? And how many years have we known each other? In this world other than your parents, no one is more suited for you than I am. I was both infuriated and amused by her. I retorted, Bai Ningbing, do you really not remember what you've done? Ask yourself, have you ever sincerely treated me with respect? You were just enjoying the superiority of me chasing after you, thinking that no matter how you treated me, I would never leave you. You've just been toying with my feelings. I hit a nerve, and Bai Ningbing's defenses completely crumbled. Yes, I made some mistakes back then. I was too young, and thought the whole world was full of temptations. I didn't want to be controlled by just you. I owe you a formal apology. Zhang Chen, I'm sorry. Bai Ningbing spoke sincerely, her tone suddenly soft, pleading with me. But even if you treat me like a stranger, don't I still have the right to pursue you again? After we parted, I realized I had become unaccustomed to life without you, and I can't imagine a future without you. Who will I share everything with? The evening wind by the river was strong, and it gave me a headache as it blew. I thought quietly for a long time before finally responding to her. To be honest, ever since I left you, I've come to realize that mutual love doesn't need to be cautious or indulgent. I can be myself without fear. Emotions shouldn't be swayed by the will of others. So I suddenly realized, perhaps those childish feelings I had when I was younger were simply a sign of my immaturity at the time. Bai Ningbing stood frozen, as though struck by lightning, for a long while. After some time, she finally spoke in a low voice, her tone full of deep hurt. But we had made a promise. To go to university together, to study abroad together, and then travel the world together. Are you really going to break those promises too? I was momentarily dazed. It was you who broke the promises first, and I've already found someone I want to share those things with. Bai Ningbing seemed to break down, and her tears flooded out in an instant. Don't say it, Chen. Please, don't say it. Looking at the pain and sadness in her eyes, I couldn't help myself. I still tried to comfort her. Maybe you don't really love me. You're just unwilling to accept it. Bai Ningbing, actually, you should have moved on by now. I didn't wait for her anymore. Liu Ruyan had been waiting for me on the other side of the street for a long time. I ran over, and she immediately grabbed my hand. Finally got rid of that little green plum. Did you tell her? From now on, my little strong will be taken care of by you. You don't even have time to help anyone else. I laughed, almost on the verge of tears. I glanced back and saw Bai Ningbing still frozen by the river bank. The streets were bustling with people, some saying goodbye. And so she and I finally parted ways. Our farewell was like the rain. Epilogue. From Bai Ningbing's perspective, after returning from Guangzhou, I kept thinking, why can't I let go of Zhang Chen? Do I really love him? Or, as he said, am I just unwilling to accept it? That day, seeing him and that girl walking away hand in hand, my heart twisted in pain for a long time. That place, which used to be mine, was now hers. It had been 10 years. How could he let someone else take my place so easily? But no matter how unwilling I was, that Zhang Chen, who lowered his head so gently to listen to her, that Zhang Chen, who would walk on the inner side to protect her, that Zhang Chen, whose eyes sparkled when he smiled, was ultimately driven away by me. I was deeply sad and incredibly angry, but I couldn't tell anyone, because everyone would just laugh at me for ruining everything. To avoid being laughed at, I quietly returned to Beijing. I still didn't believe it. Such a big city like Beijing. How could I not find another Zhang Chen? Later, I dated someone taller than Zhang Chen, someone more handsome than Zhang Chen, even someone who was a cold, studious genius, more Zhang Chen than Zhang Chen. I was confident that I would live a better life than Zhang Chen. But many times, in the middle of the night, the name I called out was actually Zhang Chen's. It was simply absurd. There was even a day when I had a nightmare. In the dream, Zhang Chen and that cheerful girl got married. I was sitting in the guest seat, dazedly watching everything unfold. Zhang Chen was looking at his bride with all his heart, his eyes holding no space for anyone else. I woke up with a start. In a reflex, I dialed Zhang Chen's number. But until the mechanical voice came on, I remembered that he had probably changed his number long ago. I completely collapsed. I cried hysterically until dawn, my whole body shaking with the pain. After a burst of forced laughter, a few people continued teasing. After all that had passed, the only people who could make my heart flutter were all measured against Zhang Chen. Even if they had more advantages, they all shared one common flaw. They were not Zhang Chen, and I couldn't control not comparing them to Zhang Chen. Later on, I broke up with someone. It felt like I could never fall in love again. On the day I got my graduation certificate, I secretly hid it from everyone, packed all my things, and went to Guangzhou again. I wanted to find Zhang Chen and regret everything. I wanted to tell him that if he forgave me this time, I would dedicate my whole life to him. Only him. I wondered if he thought about all those years we shared. Would he maybe turn back and forgive me for being foolish back then? But when I really found my way to Guangzhou, I saw on the lush green lawn Zhang Chen and that girl wearing graduation robes, taking their graduation photos. The girl had a white veil on her head, and the diamond ring on her ring finger sparkled brightly. In the instant the photographer clicked the shutter, the girl tilted her head and looked up, perfectly in sync with Zhang Chen, who was gently lowering his head to kiss her. In that moment, I suddenly lost all my strength. I realized everything was irretrievable. The boy who had grown up with me, whose heart and eyes were full of me, was ultimately lost because of me.